It's themselves. President Trump pressed by moderator Savannah Guthrie, declining to denounce the QAnon conspiracy theory.
I know nothing about QAnon.
I just told you.
I know very little. You told me, but what you tell me doesn't necessarily make it fact. I hate to say that. I know nothing about it.
The FBI has dubbed QAnon a domestic terrorism threat. On coronavirus, the president refusing to directly answer whether he supports a disputed herd immunity approach.
Do you support herd immunity as a strategy? Essentially just let people get sick.
The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself.
Medical experts say it would result in far more deaths. When pushed on his finances, the president didn't deny owing more than $400 million in loans.
Are you confirming that, yes, you do owe some $400 million?
What I'm saying is that it's a tiny percentage of my net worth.
That sounds like yes.
Who he owes that money to is why this matters so much. If, for example, it was a foreign entity who wants special favors, we need to know that information. And right now, the president still hasn't answered.
And on health care?
Your administration is about to go to the Supreme Court to argue to throw out the rest of Obamacare, which includes the protections for pre-existing conditions.
That's right.
So your administration is in court right now trying to get rid of that protection.
In order to replace it with a much better health care at a much lower price.
President Trump still hasn't introduced a health care plan, despite repeated promises to do so. Democratic nominee Joe Biden taking aim at the president for his handling of the coronavirus crisis.
When a president doesn't wear a mask or makes fun of folks like me when I was wearing a mask for a long time, then, people say, well, it mustn't be that important.
And acknowledging that his support for the 1994 crime bill was a mistake.
Here's where the mistake came. The mistake came in terms of what the states did locally.
The law widely blamed for increasing mass incarceration of people of color. The former VP now vowing to make clear his stance on packing the Supreme Court.
And they'll have a right to know where I stand before they vote.
So you'll come out with a clear position before Election Day?
Yes.
Biden asked what it would say about the country if he loses.
I hope that it doesn't say that we are as racially, ethnically, and religiously at odds with one another as it appears. The president.
Saying a lot, doesn't it? Alright guys, today's date, October 17th, 2020, and this is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I get started, we are trying to work on our language here, but understand that some video may be graphic, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So as you just seen from the video there, we didn't have a second debate as we were supposed to have on October 15th because, well, let's face it, Trump doesn't like debating. They decided to go ahead and have two different town halls. Of course, one with President Dorito, and the other one with Vice President Joe Biden. And as you can tell, I love Savannah Guthrie because she didn't give a debate, but she treated it like one where she literally went hard at the president. She made the president answer things that could have also been answered on the debate floor, but at the same time we did get our answers. And again, the proof is in the pudding, folks, as far as how you look at where both politicians stand. I did like the fact that, of course, Biden, for a lot of people, when they talked about the crime bill, I had to point this out so many times, through so many individuals about the crime bill. Look, he voted for it. But also, so did the Black Caucus, so did every Republican and Democrat, and everybody else. There were very few people that were against the crime bill that was laid out. Even Bill Clinton, who was a Democratic president himself, signed on to the crime bill and even pushed for 100,000 cops on the streets twice over in two different State of the Union addresses. So I think at this point we can also sit there and say that everybody voted for this. So can we please stop bringing up the crime bill? Yes, it did lead to the creation of the private prison industry. It did lead to the creation of mass incarceration that didn't need to happen. Now that we know the source of the problem, are we willing to do anything about it? That's the thing where I keep on saying, that's the thing I keep on telling people, look, it comes to the point of what he's going to do. He's admitted it was wrong for him to do it. Even though at the same time he's admitted he was wrong about saying that he wanted children loaded up in a racial jungle. It was wrong that he had a stance against abortion, that he had a stance against even integration at one point. We understand that. But again, It depends on what he does now. I keep on saying that Trump has set such a freaking low bar that really anybody can do one thing and still, anybody can do one thing great and still be better than him. That's just being honest. So if Biden came in and actually did a lot of things like pack the Supreme Court, I wouldn't be mad. The Supreme Court has 29 positions. Why not have a full Supreme Court? I mean, we've been lucky. I said, honestly, we've actually kind of been lucky with the conservative leading group that we have, that they all haven't decided to go conservative, and that's the fear. And that fear has never been wrong, because again, this is the second time now that the Senate, that is Republican based, who will be confirming Amy Coney Barrett. Let's be honest, they're going to. But the thing about it is, with that situation, this is the second time they've done that. Kavanaugh was their first that they ramrodded in there, and now they're trying to get her in before the election. All I can sit there and say is, how does that? I was like, how? You know, of course, I don't explain Mitch McConnell, because Mitch McConnell has sat there and blocked President Obama from putting in his picks, and other court-appointed judges, but he made sure that Trump was allowed to fill in every other lower court judge, and putting in not one but 2 Supreme Court picks at this rate. Again, the hypocrisy is astounding. But moving forward right along, guys, like I said, for a lot of states right now, early voting has happened. So again, I just like the fact that I'm actually seeing stuff like this, which is actually really encouraging.
Here, as much as I hate to stand in it, I'd love to see everybody coming out and participating.
And that's the one thing I like to see. Was at this point, like I said, for most states, early voting has happened. I know in my home state, Tennessee, early voting was started on the 14th and will end on the 29th of this month. But I love the fact that, of course, people are starting to do early voting, and that's great. That is exactly what it's there for, because again, we still have not made Election Day a national holiday. Unfortunately, I hope that the things that we do change for Election Day is that we do make that a national holiday, so you don't have to worry about between working and going to vote. We need to find other ways as far as expanding how we vote too. We need to expand on the mail-in voting. We need to expand on, like I said, there's nothing wrong with looking at the box in different ways, like smartphone apps. You're telling me we can't find an app for election voting that still won't be just as safe as mail-in voting, which would be great. But beyond that, I love the simple fact of the matter is just that I like people that are going out there and voting. Now, despite the fear that some people don't trust the mail-in voting, is the fact that people are still doing it. And again, that's going to be the difference maker in this election and the previous election. Because keep in mind what I've said about the previous election. In the previous election, we had next to no one, and that's the thing that just gets me at that point. We had next to nobody really vote. And I keep on saying this. Yes, there was Russian interference in the election. That has been proven. But the simple fact of the matter is, it's just that if just a corner of us voted, the big difference it would make in the simple fact of the matter is just the impact it would have. And that's the thing I want to keep bringing up with people, is just that, especially black voters. Like I said in my podcast on Off Limits, I said as the black voting, just our votes alone would have made the difference. Our votes alone that would have made the difference in a lot of states. We could have single-handedly turned the tide away from Dorito. So again, not just black people, but just people all aboard. Vote. And again, like I said, I myself voted. I understand the concern is going to be the lines. Like I said, I early voted, and I was waiting in line for maybe an hour and a half. And like I said before, if voting, and like I said, I look at it this way: if people before me were waiting in line 4, 5, 8, or longer hours, then me sitting in line for an hour and 30 minutes shouldn't be a problem. And I believe that because, voting is definitely a right. Everyone should have that right. And people before me had to fight for that right, and they had to endure a whole lot more than what I had to just to get to vote. So again, that does sit with me as far as voting. The fact that we should do it, we should be active, and at the same time, the matter, it is our voice. And like I said before, and many others have said this, if voting wasn't so important, why are they fighting so hard to make it more difficult for you to do so? That's the thing I always take away from that. But again, like I said, it's obvious who I'm voting for, so I'm not out here trying to influence or persuade anybody to vote who they want to vote. Just simply vote. I mean, that's the whole exercise that we're doing here that a lot of people should be doing. But that's where I'm just going to leave it at that regarding that note. So moving right along, guys. Breonna Taylor. There's a story about Breonna Taylor in which Kenneth Walker was being interviewed by Gayle King from CBS, where he does explain that an undercover officer after the entire event where Breonna Taylor was shot and killed by cops. Yes, let's call it what it is. That this was said to him by an officer.
Not at all. I don't think I realized that it was the police until I was on the phone with Breonna's mom. I hear like people outside talking. I thought they was, coming for help because I called 911.
So you think they're coming to help you?
Yes. So when I come outside, there's guns pointed at me. I'm being threatened with dogs and whatever else.
Don't look back. Put your hands on your head. You're gonna prison, that's what's going on.
The officer asked me, was I hit by any bullets? I said no. He said, that's unfortunate. So that threw me off too. So I'm like, what's he mean by that?
That's unfortunate, he said to you after you've just lost your girlfriend and you don't know what is happening. What did you think when he said that?
I didn't know what to think, and I really wasn't worried about me. Only reason I'm even out here is because the only way for her to get help in there is for me to be out here.
We were scared. No, we didn't know who it was. We didn't even know who it was.
And then I was in the back of the car. I don't know. I got drugged all the way down the street. It was cold. It was wet. I didn't want any socks and shoes on gravel, rocks, and everything. And they was just dragging me like I had scabs and stuff on my feet from that.
When they take you to the police station, still no socks and shoes?
Still no socks and shoes. When we finally left the scene, we pulled over in like a random parking lot on Manslick, which is the street like at the bottom of the hill down the street from Breonna's apartment. And another officer in an unmarked car, and he wasn't in uniform and stuff, and he came to my window. But his tone was way different than everybody else's who was just on the scene.
How so? Different how?
He told me that this was a misunderstanding, and we're gonna get to the bottom of it, and asking me, did I need anything? Did I need water and this and that?
Hey, partner, can I get your name? Kenneth Walker. Matt, there was a little bit of miscommunication. I wanted to talk to you before they left.
Then when I got to the police headquarters or whatever it was, they took the handcuffs off me and everything. I was walking around. I went to the bathroom.
Go ahead. When you get there, you can take the handcuffs off.
Oh.
So clearly y'all know something's wrong. Because you don't...
You're allowed to move freely.
Yeah, you don't allegedly shoot a police officer and they take the handcuffs off you.
Were you surprised to hear that you were accused of shooting a police officer?
I definitely was surprised. But I was more concerned about, is he okay and is Breonna okay? At this point, I still didn't even know if she was alive or not.
So when did officers tell you you were going to be charged with attempted murder? When did you hear that?
Maybe like 5 or 6 in the morning that same night.
What did you think?
I was worried about if Breonna was okay or not.
When were you finally told that Breonna didn't make it?
I never really got told, like, directly. I saw it on the news.
And that was just a snippet of, like I said, the interview actually ran a little bit longer than that, and I didn't want to keep you guys at bay on that. But yes, it's interesting now that Kenneth Walker was sitting down and was going over his recollection, and an officer sat there and told him that it was unfortunate he wasn't shot. And again, this is the part where I said, again, with the Breonna Taylor case, because we're keeping up with that, and Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others, is just that because the circumstances surrounding these cases is suspect as all get out. Especially the case of Breonna Taylor, where it was obviously the cops, it was definitely the cops' negligence. It was definitely police negligence. It was definitely, there was too many holes in the story, and a lot of collaboration between the law enforcement and the AG Daniel Cameron, to the point to where, unfortunately, a young woman may not see justice until those that are trying to prevent justice are finally brought to justice. But it is amazing to me at this point that people still believe that somehow Breonna Taylor, I mean, you talk to certain individuals and they'll say, well, she had this and he had that. They had no criminal records. Between her and her boyfriend, they had no criminal records. Even the boyfriend, her ex she was associated with, who was arrested on drug charges, sat there and said that she still had nothing to do with it. So again, I've said this once and I'll say this again. It is amazing to me how individuals out there will always tell, because like I said, the something about the media where some people have to find a way to vilify you. They will. I have seen that happen many times, that when a black person is killed by someone else who isn't black and they're at fault, they will try to find some way to make this about them. They'll try to vilify. They'll try to say there's something about their stature is what got them out there. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case with Breonna Taylor. She was asleep in her bed, and the cops with a no-knock warrant broke in. Even though they said they knocked 3 times, even though they found one witness out of many out of that apartment complex who never heard anything, they found one person. They found one person who sat there and said, "Oh yeah, they did knock." Well, no one else could hear it. And like I said, the whole entire case itself, including the AG, needs to be removed, because the simple fact of the matter is they're simply covering up for the police. Moving right along, guys. Like I said before, I always say this about about Trump and money, and I keep on saying follow the money. Well, here's the story again. Like I said, you can't sit there and say at this point when there's all this smoke around Trump, there's not a fire. Check this out.
CNN has learned that federal prosecutors, including special counsel Robert Mueller, spent more than 3 years investigating whether money flowing through an Egyptian state-owned bank could have backed millions of dollars that Donald Trump donated to his own campaign in 2016. We should point out, ultimately, the Mueller team was not able to obtain all the information it needed for the investigation, nor could the U.S. attorneys in D.C., who continued the investigation until this year and decided ultimately to not pursue charges. Let's bring in CNN senior justice correspondent Evan Perez, who's breaking this story. Evan, this is not something that was publicly known before today.
That's right, Jake. This investigation was conducted with utmost secrecy given the sensitivity. It started soon after Trump won the presidency back in 2016, continued until this summer, and has never been described publicly. We spoke to more than a dozen sources familiar with the effort, in addition to what we learned in newly released court documents and hints in public records. 2 of the sources told CNN that FBI investigators first became interested in the case after intelligence, including from an informant, suggested that Trump's last-minute $10 million injection into his campaign less than 2 weeks before the 2016 election could have been backed by money that came from overseas through an Egyptian state-owned bank. Now, the probe was confirmed to us just this week when we asked the Justice Department to respond to our reporting. It's not clear that investigators ever had concrete evidence of a relevant bank transfer. But multiple sources told us that there was sufficient information to justify seeking a subpoena in court and to keep the investigation open even after the Mueller probe ended. Now, the investigation of a potential campaign finance law violation began with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington before Special Counsel Robert Mueller took it on. It was largely conducted by his team of investigators who went to great lengths to keep its very existence hidden. The only public indication was a secretive court proceedings over a subpoena that Mueller's team issued to an unnamed foreign company for records. Now, neither the company nor the details of what exactly prosecutors were looking for was ever publicly discussed. But CNN is told that it was a fight with a state-owned Egyptian bank. Now, when Mueller was done, the investigation continued. It was handed back to the U.S. Attorney here in Washington, who soon afterwards told the court that it was still a robust probe. Now, it was just this summer that the case was closed with no charges filed. The case stalled after the Egyptian bank turned over what federal investigators thought were insufficient records in response to their subpoena. Among the chief questions that prosecutors were trying to answer, but never did, was whether Donald Trump was supported by or indebted to a foreign power. As for the Justice Department, here's what a senior justice official told CNN in response to this report. Quote, the case was first looked at by the special counsel investigators who failed to bring a case, and then it was looked at by the U.S. Attorney's Office and career prosecutors in the National Security Section, who also were unable to bring a case. Based upon the recommendations of both the FBI and those career prosecutors, Michael Sherwin, the acting U.S. Attorney, formally closed the case in July. Now, Special Counsel Robert Mueller had no comment, and a senior advisor to the Trump 2020 campaign, Jason Miller, told CNN, quote, the president has never received a penny from Egypt. Jake.
All right, interesting. Was there ever discussion of trying to get to the bottom of this by subpoenaing the president's financial records?
Well, multiple sources tell us that last year, federal prosecutors in Washington proposed pushing for the president's financial records. The decision went to then U.S. Attorney Jesse Liu, who, after weeks poring over the investigative records, decided to reject the subpoena request. Sources say that Liu decided there was not enough to meet the standard for the subpoena. She also told people in her office, according to these sources, that if there were enough evidence, then Mueller himself would have gone after them. Now, interestingly, she didn't close the case. That was done by the new acting attorney, U.S. Attorney Michael Sherwin this summer.
And Evan, the special counsel's office was known for keeping their various investigative threads under wraps. But there were never any leaks about this, as I can recall, even after the case closed. How did they go about keeping this so secret?
Right. You know, the Egyptian investigation was never mentioned overtly in the Mueller report. It was listed among 11 cases that Mueller transferred to other prosecutors when his investigation ended. But that entry was redacted. As I mentioned, that court fight was done in a highly secretive manner. Filings never publicly mentioned the names or significant details. At one point, Mueller's team had the court lock down an entire floor of a federal courthouse, allowing attorneys to enter and exit without being seen. A spokesman for the Egyptian government, by the way, Jake, said that they didn't have any comment.
And this investigation continued under Bill Barr's Justice Department. Did prosecutors explain why?
Well, we know that they told the court that the investigation was continuing robustly and, quote, very much a live issue. We know about the consideration of a subpoena under Jesse Liu. That's about it until it was closed this past month. The Justice Department unredacted a list of cases that Mueller transferred for further investigation, including the Roger Stone matter, for instance. One case listed simply described as, quote, a foreign campaign contribution. Now, sources tell us that that was the Egyptian probe. Now, the fact of the matter is that the case was closed without investigators really getting an answer to their ultimate question, and that is, was Donald Trump supported by or indebted to a foreign power?
All right.
And that's the truth. It's the whole idea, like I said before, guys, follow the money. I have said this before, I will say it again, follow the money. If you don't believe by now that Dorito is compromised, he's just as compromised as his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has been compromised. It is amazing to me that Hillary Clinton, back in the 2016 presidential election, turned around and sat there and said, I'm not surprised she's compromised. And keep in mind, this is a woman that worked as Secretary of State after she was a First Lady, after she was a New York Senator. I'm like, It's like, do we need anything more than this at this point? Yes, he owes money to the Egyptians. I wouldn't be surprised he owes money to the Russians. I wouldn't be surprised he owes money to the Saudi family. Matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the entire Eastern Hemisphere looks at him and goes, oh yeah, we own him now. Because that's the truth. And at the same time, like I said before, everybody thinks Mueller should have pressed it. Mueller should have done this. Mueller should have done that. Mueller's only job was investigating a correlation between Russian interference with the election and everything that goes with it. That was his main job. It's like, well, if Mueller had evidence, he would have had and pushed it. He did have evidence. He had evidence against most of Trump's advisors, against Cohen, against Floyd, against really a handful of other Trump administration officials. He had evidence for and pushed for charges against them. Even those that were associated, who were ambassadors, like that one woman who was thought to be a spy, which found out surprise, she was. But again, it's the whole thing of like, y'all expect Mueller just to come in and just do what exactly? I mean, his whole job was investigating, and then supposed to present it at the time was the Attorney General for charges, which thank goodness William Barr didn't come until later, but William Barr did still come and just made a mess of a 2-year investigation and still did not provide the full report that, the American people are owed, because I think that Mueller did find that there was more than enough to go after the president, and William Barr, being the president's personal attorney, decided no, and gave a short paragraph as to why. But again, like I said before, whenever it comes to campaign laws and finance and things of that nature, I hate to sound like a Law and Order case, but always follow the money. If you follow the money, you will always find the truth. And trust me, if we followed the money on Donald Trump, we would find out a whole lot of things that a lot of us already knew, and a lot of people will be disappointed to find out that Trump is just a debt-riddled con man. Really is. But going into other things that are just as messed up, apparently that Trump cannot handle COVID-19 cases, which unfortunately we're starting to see in most areas, the actual fear of what would happen when hospitals started turning away patients.
During a dangerous new phase this morning, a third surge as the United States reports more than 51,000 new cases a day. This as we are closing in on 8 million total cases. Alex Perez is joining us this morning from Chicago, where Illinois. Alex is seeing a disturbing new record. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Cecilia. Yeah, we're seeing here the highest one-day total we have seen since the beginning of the pandemic across the country. It's clear a third surge is underway.
This morning, some experts warning the latest COVID data is clear and points to a third surge of COVID-19 underway across the country. New cases catapulting 18% just this week. Here in Illinois, 4,015 new coronavirus cases reported Thursday alone, the highest one-day increase since the pandemic began.
If you've been following the numbers here in Chicago, this is not a good week for COVID.
Cases also on the rise in states like Ohio, North Carolina, and Wisconsin, where they have readied a field hospital near Milwaukee for overflow COVID-19 patients, fearing hospitals could soon run out of room. Some regions here dealing with staff shortages and ICUs that are 90% full.
This is becoming life and death for folks in the state of Wisconsin.
And in Seattle, researchers say a nursing home resident is the third known person in the U.S. to have been infected twice with coronavirus. The man is in his 60s and spent 40 days in the hospital in the spring before testing negative multiple times, only to get sick with COVID 5 months later. And as we head towards Thanksgiving and holiday planning, millions of Americans facing tough choices. The Trump administration's testing czar telling ABC News Thursday that families, even those who get tested, should think twice about how they celebrate this year.
You can't rely on testing, because if you're negative one day, you could be positive the next day or the next day. And so you can't rely on that as sort of your card to say it's okay to get together. And I wouldn't risk my family's life, my mother's life on that.
A lot to consider for families as we approach the holidays. There is some encouraging news this morning on the vaccine front. Pfizer says it believes it can have a vaccine ready for approval by the third week of November. TJ?
All right. Okay, so a few things I'll take away from that. Like I said before, my home state of Tennessee, unfortunately, spineless Governor Lee has lifted all restrictions and said, hey, Tennessee's able to go back to normal, 100%, go for it. And I shudder because Tennessee's also have rising cases of coronavirus there, and opening the states back to 100% is never a good idea. Also, at the same time, like I said before, that is the fear that hospitals are starting to do field hospitals and running out of areas to actually handle patients. And again, the whole idea of it all is that this pandemic could have been handled so very differently, and yet it's not. Again, for the simple fact of the matter, it's just that Trump's answer to this, which if you're watching that, which if you try to stomach watching his town hall, except with Savannah Guthrie, with that one, that was awesome because she made a point to get some answers out. But he tried to sit there and say, we know we did the best we could, which was not, because keep in mind, before President Obama left office, he did set up a pandemic response unit across the states with the handbook on how to handle it, and Trump dismantled it. So again, we shouldn't be surprised by that. But like I said, with Tennessee and Florida really opening up states, and of course with the holidays not too far off. I mean, we're not that far. We're not that far off from Thanksgiving and Christmas. But the thing about it is, though, it does actually will impact travel. It will impact anyone that goes that really goes out or wants to see family. And again, we always try to, like I said, avoiding large crowds is the case, but if you have a big family, that's going to be very difficult. So I would say in this course, just use best advice. I know I can't, being with family on Thanksgiving is great if you do celebrate that, or if you just want the holiday break. Either way, it's fine to actually go about that. It's just really taking into consideration as far as what you're doing is what makes all the difference. But moving right along, guys, I did want to do a little bit of the story. It's kind of a long video, but I just want to show the first part of this where I said this is where a lot of African Americans go through in home appraisal. And it's amazing that, again, when I talked about redlining and things of that nature, and how the housing market is definitely not looking for black owners, I should say. It's amazing what they'll do in some areas when you do own a home and you're just trying to get a simple appraisal.
Florida is recording the moment she has decided to do something really hard.
Because it does seem like one of the few ways that we can achieve economic fairness by just having my husband be in the house by himself and taking down all evidence that he has a black family.
Her name is Abina Horton. She is a labor and employment attorney, and this is her husband, Alex Horton, an artist. Last June, they set out to get an appraisal of their home in Jacksonville, Florida, hoping to refinance and pay down the mortgage. A home filled with books and photos and love. Her family, his family. But when the appraiser came, Abina was there and said she felt something unsettling.
It clicked in my mind almost immediately that I understand what the issue was here. Why did I let myself forget that I live in America as a black person and that I need to take some extra steps to get a fair result?
The appraisal comes back. It is shockingly low. Even the bank couldn't make sense of that number. Coming out of the first appraisal, was it rage? Was it exhaustion?
It was exhaustion, I would say. This person is being so petty and hateful, and he's wasting my time.
So she decided to get a second appraisal with a new appraiser. Same house, but something different.
Hey, it's Abina again, and back with another edition of the things that we are taking down from our walls. There are a few things in my house that are demonstrably black. So clearly the pictures that we have all over the house with all of our family members, with my grandmother getting married back in the 40s. We have the picture of Charlie Bolden, who's an African-American astronaut. Pictures of me when I was a baby. Black Panther.
We both put away pictures, and it's like, these are people I love, these are people I care about, and I need to hide them. That was very tough.
And then, of course, the primary thing that we did was remove both me and my son from the home during the second appraisal.
But when you're doing this, what does that do to the spirit?
It's crushing the spirit, of course. I'm ashamed of it. I'll be honest. I'm ashamed of the fact that my son will see that this is something that I did. I'm ashamed to say that I really wanted to refinance and pay off my house sooner and have full equity in my home. And so I was willing to put up with that indignity to do it because I knew it was going to be effective. So it was a combination of pragmatism and deep and profound sadness doing that.
She took down all the photos of her family, replacing them only with photos of her husband and his white family. And he is the person in the home when the new appraiser comes. And when the second appraisal comes back, the value of their house has shot up more than $100,000, a 40% increase.
It was primarily financial relief. I'm just glad that we're going to get the rate that we want. And then I think it was about 15 seconds later when the tears came, because we realized just how much more removing that variable increased the value of our home. To know just how much, me personally, I was devaluing the home just by sitting in it, just by living my life, just by paying my mortgage, just by raising my son there.
After she posted her story on Facebook, there was a deluge of comments and people who said they had tried similar experiments with similar results. Andre Perry, a fellow at the Brookings Institution, wrote the book Know Your Price. He studies the effects of discrimination in housing.
What we found after controlling for education, crime, walkability, and all those fancy Zillow metrics, that homes in black neighborhoods are devalued by 23%, and cumulatively, that's about $156 billion in lost equity. $156 billion would have financed more than 4 million small businesses. It would have paid for more than 8 million college degrees. That discrimination is leading to a widening of the wealth gap. And so one can argue that we're in worse shape than we were 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Which made me think about an investigation ABC News did long ago. One we hoped back then would open all our eyes.
Prime Time. From New York, Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. We bring you the results of a primetime investigation.
1, 2, 3, 4, check.
We brought in 2 young professional housing testers, accompanied by hidden cameras. Here's how we started.
Meet John Cunin and Glenn Brewer. They're both from the Midwest. They went to Big Ten schools, grew up in middle-class families, even play on the same softball team. They're friends. 2 young men whose lives are virtually the same in every way but one, the one you can see. A few months ago, John and Glenn agreed to pack their bags and help with our investigation. Our question, how much difference does the color of your skin make in everyday life in America? John and Glenn need to find some place to live. John goes first.
A 1-bedroom, it's got air conditioning.
The manager gives John a set of keys.
The key system works as your master. Okay. Okay?
John tours the vacant apartment. He's told it's available immediately.
Got a couple other places I'm going to look at, and if I decide on this one, I'll be back. I'll have this filled up. Okay?
Okay, I appreciate it.
All right.
John leaves, and listen to what happens when Glenn walks in a few minutes later. Suddenly,
the apartment has been rented.
The manager explains that regrettably, early that morning, a woman paid a deposit on the last available apartment.
Oh, called in earlier this morning?
There's nothing for Glenn to see, so he leaves.
Bye-bye. You too. Okay.
We decide to go in search of an explanation.
May we ask you a couple of questions? These 2 gentlemen came in, and when this one came in, you gave him keys to an apartment, 1 bedroom with air conditioning. But when this gentleman came in 10 minutes later, you said there was no apartment available.
No, I told this gentleman I had a call on the apartment.
But we pointed out what he had said. He had told Glenn the apartment had been rented by a woman that morning. Yet he showed John the apartment in the afternoon.
Oh, ma'am, I am not prejudiced. I got Mexican, I got Jewish, my God.
How many black people in this apartment?
There's none.
Later, Glenn remembered the manager's parting words.
He said, "Bless you both." And that infuriated me. How dare you wish blessings on me after you have just insulted me, after you have just told me that I can't live here because of the color of my skin.
And here is what happened when the two men set out to look at purchasing a car. They ask about the same red convertible, same salesman. How much down payment is needed?
What do they usually ask down?
Anywhere from 10 to 20%. You know, it just depends, sure. Well, normally the banks want anywhere from 20 to 25%. So you're looking at a couple of grand there.
Already, John's advantage is as much as $1,000. And what about the price of the car?
You could probably pick it up for somewhere around the 9 range.
9?
I mean, if I could get you in the car for, say, 95 even, so you should be interested.
Since we heard all of this from the van, we decided to get out and see if we could get some answers. And we asked him why John and Glenn were quoted different figures.
Well, they're all different. It just depends.
Two guys come in looking at the same car. What's the difference? For him, the banks will do 10 to 20. For him, 20, 25? What's the difference?
Depends on the vehicle, man.
Well, they were looking at the same vehicle.
Oh, okay.
And here we are today in new times and a new conversation about race. We decided to try to find Glenn and John again.
Hello.
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 Almost 30 years. Can we believe it?
The report we did together has been played in classrooms and diversity seminars for the past 3 decades.
And I remember at the time, even some people talking to me after saying like, well, that took me out of the denial phase. And so this idea that they were denying that racism even existed in this country.
But for these two men, that experience is as vivid as yesterday.
I just remember in that incident that particular gentleman gave me the master key for the units in that complex. Not that, just I said, if the other key doesn't work, here's your master. I mean, I remember that vividly, and just what a striking difference that really was.
When you start affecting people's pocketbooks, their wallets, I think that has a serious impact on their life.
You remember after we screened the piece, you said to me, I knew that there was bias. I knew bias was at work. I just didn't know how much nicer white people were to each other than they were to me.
I believed I presented myself as a pretty good person, as a pretty decent guy. And so that's not to say John isn't, but I just thought that all things being equal, we would receive the same treatment, and we obviously did not.
And look at some statistics from now. When it comes to buying cars, minorities pay on average $410 more per car loan than white people with the exact same credentials. And what about renting an apartment? A study just released of the Boston rental market showed discrimination against black renters 71% of the time.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing
So our testers, John and Glenn, have stayed friends. There's Glenn at John's wedding, Glenn with his 3 daughters, and John's 2 sons. And they have both spent their careers working on equality for their communities. So over the 30 years, living their one friendship and their 2 realities, wondering how this can still be happening.
What would you like to say to that person almost 30 years out?
This is not changing. What else should you do to try to keep progress moving forward and keep working to make things change?
I would say to myself, don't get tired, because the road is going to be a lot longer than you anticipate. Don't give up.
And when we come back, what these Americans think should be done.
Okay, I admit I let the whole thing play out because it needed to be played. Yeah, racial bias is still around. I actually do remember that Nightline special about racial discrimination, racial bias, because that was actually played in my high school. By my civics teacher, actually, when I think about it. But yeah, I mean, think about that. You own a home. You own a home. You want to get appraised. You see a car that you want. You want to go to the dealership. You're looking into a bank to get a business loan or a personal loan, home loan, what have you. Despite the situation, it is amazing to see the contrast between then and now and realize nothing hasn't changed. Yeah, I mean, there is racial bias toward black people. I can't tell you half the time I've seen it. I've experienced it myself. At the same time, it is amazing to me how some people just simply do not understand that, yes, this is the reason why we say there's bias. We wouldn't cry foul just because we cry foul. Obviously not. But for the simple fact of the matter, guys, is that whole idea of just, as you've seen by a couple, I mean, you saw the pain of that black woman that had to turn around and remove stuff that was pretty much signs of a black person living there in order to get a higher appraisal than a white person. That is racial bias. There is racial bias in economics, and this goes back to what I've said for people calling for change. We have to start. I mean, we are the biggest consumers in the U.S. Black people. And so therefore, the only way we're going to make a change out of this is that we need to start buying black. Take our dollars away from them and put our dollars into us is usually how that works. Because trust me, as the young black man said in the video, the best way you can hurt them is economically. Because once you start taking money away from them, then you have their attention. You don't believe me? Look at most companies that have soured away from black people and ask you if they're still doing well. I guarantee you that's a very small handful of companies that have spurned black people and are yet still being heard of. Don't believe me? Have you ever heard of Cristal? Cristal used to be the biggest thing because black people made it that way until a Cristal spokesperson said he didn't make this for black people. Now, ask yourself one question. Have you seen Cristal since then? Because I surely haven't. I mean, it's the same sense where Tommy Hilfiger took a hit. Tommy Hilfiger sat there, was quoted or paraphrased that he didn't make his clothing for black people. Again, a lot of black people were wearing Tommy Hilfiger, and for a while, Tommy Hilfiger did take a hit from that. Like I said before, when you spurn black people away, their dollars go away with it, and you shouldn't be. And like I said, only a handful of companies managed to tread that water and still survive afterwards, but not many. But again, going back to the whole thing of home appraisal. It is insulting that you'll do all these things, and you shouldn't. You really should not have to do anything to get a fair home appraisal if your home is worth it. And from when I was looking at their home, a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom ranch style house, that should be close to $500,000. Yeah, should be no problem in that. But again, I just want to point that out because, this is the stuff that we unfortunately do go through regardless. And like me, I'm a car guy. Can you imagine? I said, I'm sitting here in my mind, like, if I go on a car lot, is he giving me the price because this is the price? Or because, you can check True Car and True Pricing and all that stuff. But the thing about it is, though, and then in the back of your mind, you're going to be like, well, how much of this is only because of my financials and how much of this is not because I'm black? That goes through every black person's mind. That's just a given. But like I said, going back again to the switching gears for a second, going back to Joe Biden again. Like I said, him actually supporting the crime bill was his greatest mistake. And again, for all those, because there are a lot of people out there saying, "Well, Joe supported the crime bill." Okay, I'm only gonna play this once because in his own words, this is what he said.
No, not at all. Garnet Valley, Pennsylvania, Republican who voted for President Trump last time.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Vice President Biden. Nice to meet you. What's your view on the crime bill that you wrote in 1994, which showed prejudice against minorities? Where do you stand today on that?
Well, first of all, things have changed drastically. That crime bill, when it voted, The Black Caucus voted for it. Every black mayor supported it across the board. And it didn't. The crime bill itself did not have mandatory sentences except for two things. It had 3 strikes and you're out, which I voted against in the crime bill, but it had a lot of other things in it that turned out to be both bad and good. I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. That was part of it, the assault weapons ban and other things that were good. What I was against was giving states more money for prison systems that they could build, state prison systems. And you have 93 out of every 100 people in jail now is in a state prison, not in a federal prison, because they built more prisons. I also wrote into that bill a thing called drug courts. I don't believe anybody should be going to jail for drug use. They should be going into mandatory rehabilitation. We should be building rehab centers to have these people housed. We should wipe out, we should decriminalize marijuana, wipe out the record so you can actually say in honesty, you ever been arrested for anything? You can say no, because we're going to pass a law saying there is no background that you have to reveal relative to the use of marijuana. And so there's a lot of things, but in addition to that, we got to change the system. I joined with a group of people in the House to provide for changing the system from punishment to rehabilitation. Along with a guy named Arlen Specter, who you may remember, I wrote the Second Chance Act.
But in the meantime, an awful lot of people were jailed for minor drug crimes after the
Exactly right.
Was it a mistake to support it?
Yes, it was. But here's where the mistake came. The mistake came in terms of what the states did locally. What we did federally, we said it was, and you remember, George, it was all about the same time for the same crime. What I had done as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, took the 10 circuit courts of appeals, took some really brilliant lawyers working for me in judiciary. We did a study, and we determined what happens if, for the first, second, third offense, for any crime in the criminal justice system, at the federal level, if you're a black man, it's the first time you committed robbery. How long would you go to jail on average? If you're a white man, how long? Black man would go to jail on average 13 years. White man, 2 years. I go down the list of every single crime. So we set up a sentencing commission. We didn't set the time. Every single solitary maximum was reduced in there. But what happened was, it became the same time for the same crime. So it said you have to serve between 1 and 3 years. It ended up becoming much lower. Black folks went to jail a lot less than they would have before, but it was a mistake.
Let me ask another follow-up on the crime bill. It also funded 100,000 police back in 1994. You've often said that more cops clearly mean less crime. Do you still believe that?
Yes, if in fact they're involved in community policing, not jump squads. For example, when we had community policing from the mid-90s on till Bush got elected, what happened? Violent crime actually went down precipitously. Remember the significant rise in violent crime that was occurring in the late 80s into the 90s. It went down, and fewer African Americans were arrested because you had the requirement. The cops didn't like it. They didn't like the community policing because you had to have 2 people in a vehicle. They had to get out of their cars. They had to introduce themselves to who owned the local liquor store, who owned the local grocery store, who was the woman on the corner. And what they would do, George, they'd actually go and give people their phone numbers. The cop would give the phone number. So if Nellie Smith was on the 2nd floor where drug deals took place and things happened below her, her apartment, she could call and say, "It's Millie, and there's something going on here," and they'd never reveal it was her because they know if she knew that in fact they'd never report the crime. She'd never report. So it actually started to come down. What happened? They eliminated the funding for community policing. Community policing doesn't mean more people coming in up-armored Humvees and swarming like that. When they did, it turned out that by the time we got to the late 90s, the crime had come down so much, and the mayors and everybody asked the question, where do you want me to spend the money? They say, well, only 1% thought violent crime was a problem. It was as high as 22%.
Right now we have a systemic problem. How do you get the kind of policing, prevent the kind of policing?
You have to change the way in which they police. One of the things I'm going to do, George, is set up a national study group made up of cops, social workers, as well as made up of the black community and the brown community to sit down in the White House and over the next year come up with significant reforms that need to take place within communities. You have to bring them together. One of the things I've observed is, you know, the neighborhood I grew up in Claymont, you either became a cop, a firefighter, or a priest. I wasn't qualified much to do any one of them. But here's the deal, all kidding aside, most cops don't like bad cops.
Correct.
They don't like it.
Correct.
And so what happens is they get intimidated into not reporting. So one of the things we do is there has to be transparency available. We have to be able to go in at the federal level, be able to go in and check out whether or not there's systematic problems within police departments. If in fact a cop needs to be tried, it's not the prosecutor in the community, in the district or there. You got to go outside the community to get another prosecutor to come in and handle the crime. There's a lot of things we've learned. And it takes time, but we can do this. You can ban chokeholds, but beyond that, you have to teach people how to de-escalate circumstances. De-escalate. So instead of anybody coming at you and the first thing you do is shoot to kill, you shoot them in the leg. There's ways you have to do more background checks in terms of whether or not the person.
And I'll just stop right there because, like I said, he kind of goes into the same stuff he's already been saying. I wanted to play that just because that's a thing that seems to be stuck with a lot of people. Is the fact of the matter of just simply put, they're going to stick on the crime bill. That seems to be the only thorn that everybody sticks to when it comes to Biden. Will he sign up to the crime bill? And as I said at the beginning of this podcast, he's not the only one that did it. He's not, and black people did sign to that crime bill as well. He's exactly right. The thing about it is, I'm wanting to see what he does now. Like I said, we've put up there have been laws that have been put up for immoral reasons, and there's laws that's been taken down for moral reasons. For the simple fact of the matter is just that now, if he looks at the crime bill, that yes, he did help to bring into the light, what is he going to do on the downside? That's what I want to see. That's what I want to hear. Because like I said, it's not about the fact of your previous actions, because technically, if we all went by previous actions, that every politician would be tried and hanged by now. The thing about it is just like I said before, what does he plan to do? And I keep on saying this the whole entire time. I said this about Biden when they was going to come into play. I said the same thing about Kamala Harris. Because trust me, if the vice presidents have another debate, I can guarantee Pence is going to try to go after her record. Because that was the reason why Kamala Harris isn't it's the reason why she's not a presidential candidate, but a vice presidential candidate. Because like I said before in the debates that she had before, she would not stand on her record as a prosecutor. She kept avoiding it. She kept on avoiding the Medicare for all. She avoided the universal income. She avoided all these questions that showed that she just wasn't able to stand the heat as far as defending her record and showing what she can do moving forward. Now, I'm glad that, her debating Pence, yeah, I admit she did dodge a few questions. She did. There's just no way around it. She did dodge a few questions. But she still showed that, yes, that she can govern and be a whole lot better than Pence was. Now, going back to Biden, though, it's the same thing. Now, this is the reason why I say Biden is obviously the better choice than Trump. And I've seen some people on Facebook and social media, I'm not voting, it's the lesser of two evils. Let's not start that conversation again, because it's not lesser of two evils. I personally think back in 2016, Hillary was the clear choice. She was the most experienced. She did show that she should have been Madam President. There's just no way of ands or buts around it. People only voted for Trump because half of them couldn't stand a woman being president. The other half just like the fact that someone that was racist and xenophobic was about to run for office and they can get behind him. Let's just call it what it is. But moving right along before we get to our last couple of stories, guys. Of course, as I said before, Amy Coney Barnett is set to be confirmed as the next Supreme Court justice, and I just want to point out her greatest hits.
Amy Coney Barrett is one step closer to becoming Justice Barrett, concluding 2 days of marathon questioning from senators. Chairman Lindsey Graham praising her as a trailblazer.
This is the first time in American history that we've nominated a woman who's unashamedly pro-life and embraces her faith without apology, and she's going to the court. Seat at the table is waiting on you.
On her final day, facing weighty questions about presidential powers and immigration.
Would you agree, first, that nobody is above the law? Not the president, not you, not me.
I agree, no one is above the law.
Does a president have an absolute right to pardon himself?
Senator Leahy, so far as I know, that question has never been litigated. It's one that calls for legal analysis of what the scope of the pardon power is.
Do you think it's wrong to separate a child from their parent, not for the safety of the child or parent, but to send a message? As a human being, do you believe that that's wrong?
Senator, I think you're trying to engage me on the administration's border and separation policies, and I can't express a view on that.
Some Republicans asking about more mundane matters.
Who does the laundry in your house?
We increasingly have been trying to get our children to take responsibility for their own, but those efforts are not always successful.
Democrats insisting the real issue is how she'll change the balance of power on the court.
My core concern here, Your Honor, is that your confirmation may launch a new chapter of conservative judicial activism, unlike anything we've seen in decades.
Senator Chris Coons, a close ally of presidential nominee Joe Biden, saying he won't support her nomination, displaying a list 120 cases long of all the times Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg joined the majority, while Barrett's mentor, the late Justice Antonin Scalia, dissented.
These are cases that touch on nearly every aspect of modern American life.
So at this point, Amy Coney Barrett is on a fast track to being confirmed, though the committee does have to wait a week before they can send a vote to send her nomination to the full Senate. But after that, Republicans are planning to move as fast as they can and hold a final vote on her confirmation the week before Election Day.
Now, that is the part that honestly should bother you. And I know it bothers me. For the simple fact of the matter, guys, like I said before, Amy Coney Barrett is being ramrodded. She's basically, this is Kavanaugh version 2. And you can tell that because the Republicans were not pressing, pushing questions. The Democrats were. And like I said before, it is amazing that for her to be a Supreme Court judge, or will be, she could answer simple questions. Can the president pardon himself? No. No president has ever pardoned himself. And you can't pardon yourself because you're the president. That's something a dictator would do. Do you believe that parents should be separated? Do you believe that parents should be separated from their children if they, under circumstances for the safety of the child? Again, that should be easy. That for the Democrats, that's such an easy question. That should have been a softball to her. Not to mention the fact of the matter is just that, again, she keeps on saying, well, you're trying to say that's a question of litigation, needs to be analyzed. Really? Again, like I said before, I keep on saying this, guys. To bring a Supreme Court justice, you realize that no experience is required. Think about this. The highest court in the land does not require previous experience, litigation, a background in constitutional law, things of that nature, or even trying law as a lawyer, or an advocate, or a prosecutor, or an attorney. None of that is required. That alone should be scary. Because as long as you're nominated and you're confirmed, you're a justice. Again, I can't sit there and say how scary that is, that now the Republicans, because they realize they're not trying to get the stimulus package deal done to where it actually can help many of Americans who are still now facing the unemployment benefits. And so the fact of the matter is that, again, COVID-19 is still keeping a lot of people from working. At the same time, they're looking for help because they were getting help with that 600 bonus plus benefits a week. That was really helping to make ends meet. It wasn't a lot, but it was helping. It was a lot more than what they had. Republicans aren't trying to do that. They're too busy trying to get one more person in because I believe they fear that they're going to lose the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And for the, I want to say Democratic, I want to say the 17th or 18th time. I have to go back and look. I know it's up there. But, they are fearing the fact that we could have a democratically controlled Senate, House of Representatives, and a presidency, and have to spend the next 4 years undoing what feels like 8 years. It feels like 8 years, but it really was 4 years. But undoing the 4 years of what Trump has damage has done. In the same sense, how Barack Obama had to sit there for the first 4 of his 8 years, had to undo everything Bush did. again, it's almost a cycle. I say Republicans are literally hypocrites. They are. Because they call themselves financial conservatives when they're the ones that are actually, basically the sugar daddies for corporations. Corporations, millionaires, and billionaires. They really are. Because they trample on the middle class, but love to be able to support those at the top of the chain. And will spout Reaganomics until the end of time. I'm almost certain of it. But again, this goes back to Amy Coney Barrett being confirmed. Unfortunately, it looks like unless the Republicans grab a brain, which obviously probably won't, that she is all but confirmed to be the next Supreme Court justice in about a week. So, yeah, we're all looking forward to that. But before I do get out of here, guys, before we get to our feel good news segments, I do have two last stories I want to go into. One of them, I like the fact, like I say this for black people, is just that I love that black people are getting more now involved in politics. The simple fact of the matter is just that even more so that we have to look for new ideas, new ways of hailing things. Diddy seems to have a wonderful idea about this, as he's tweeted. The number one priority is to get Trump out of office. He has to go. We cannot allow this man to continue to try and divide us. The people have the most responsibility and should be scared to death of this man are white people. We are on the verge of a race war. Things have gotten too serious. It would be irresponsible of me to have us hold our vote hostage. Keep in mind, Diddy did say back a few months ago that we need to hold our vote until we get some guarantees, which is pretty much a dumbass thing to do, which is pretty much dumb to say to begin with. He also says, but it would be irresponsible to let go of this moment to go by and not make sure we are going forward and make sure we do to on our own politics. We need to get Biden in to hold him accountable. Trump has taken things too far. As black people, we aren't even a topic of real discussion. We can no longer stand for the same thing over and over, expecting different results. That's insanity. It's time we unify. And of course, he goes at the bottom and says, so I'm launching one of the boldest things I've ever launched. I am launching a political black party with some young black elected officials and activists. It's called Our Black Party, and it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. It doesn't matter if you are Republican or Democrat. I've always sit there and said this. Black Republicans do exist. They do. I wonder why. I mean, I can understand the other side of it. And when I say the other side, I can understand the other side of it because it's happened with Candace Owens. It happened with Silk and whatever those two heifers' names are. It happened with those 1776 twins. It's happened with really anybody that is black and has spoken out or in favor of the Republican Party and immediately got clout, got fame, got endorsements, when it comes down to your status elevates. I've learned this, and I've sat there and said this, if this show ever took a Republican stance and I started going over and I started spitting everything Republican, trust you me, in this political climate, I would be on a Republican national stage with a fucked up haircut like Dale Cameron's overnight. But I'm not going to do that because I can think and read. And I've said before, I've never understood Republicans, black Republicans, or even women that vote Republican. You're basically with a party that votes against your own interests, that will cut your legs off and still say, hey, you still support us, even though your legs are cut out from under you. I've never understood it. And that's why I say it's hard for me to get behind people who will cut the legs out from under you and then smile in your face as you're doing it. And again, this is why I sit there and say with the Republican Party, they literally are extremists to a whole. Maybe not a terrorist group per se, but they are extremists. And I get Diddy. Diddy did have the right idea about a political party. But saying that it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, you can't just open the bar for both sides. Now, understand for a lot of people that there are many other political parties out there besides Democrat and Republican. They're just the two big money ones. They are. I mean, you have independents, you have green parties, you have, I think, about 5 other political parties that are known out there. But the thing about it is, like I said, Democrats and Republicans are the big money ones. Would I love to see a black political party? Yes, I would love to see that. I would love to see us pushing our own activists, pushing our own candidates, pushing our policies. I would love to see that. The reason why is because then it shows we are building our base. We are building our power. If we fund it with black dollars and we show that we're behind it, then yes, we can show that we're about change that way. I agree with Diddy up until the point where he said the last part, where he sat there and said it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, and that's where I had the problem with it. But like I said, I love the idea. I'm not knocking the idea. I think the idea is great. I think the idea can work, and even more so that we need to start really supporting that. But aside from that, like I said, he's not the only cat out there that did have some ideas about how we as black folks need to move forward. And yes, I'm going to talk about Ice Cube and what he said, and the news that came out this week about his contract with Black America, and the fact of that he may have been speaking with the Trump administration regarding this. But here's a little bit of him talking with Big Boy from Big Boy's Neighborhood about it.
I mean, that ain't gonna cut it, man. We need real money on the streets, to hit the streets, legal money.
Right.
We need people to go after this legal money. And we need it to actually hit the communities and not be circumvented by all these games that's played in high places. So I just feel like we have so many people that's been in positions to, why do I have to come up with the damn contract with Black America?
Right.
Like, why can't I just go and rap?
Right.
Since I'm just a rapper, why can't I just go rap? Why I gotta come up with it? What have these people been doing all this time, man? To come up with a concrete plan and push it hard. So that's when I say question people who are just telling you to vote and you don't really see what you're getting. So you gotta ask them, man, well, what you getting?
And you're not telling anyone not to vote. You
Of course not.
Oh, your vote don't count. Sit your ass down.
No,
and just like in
actually,
life,
your vote do count.
Right.
This is what I'm saying. Your vote do count. Make sure you're getting what you want for it. Right. And if you're satisfied, go for it. I'm not trying to discourage anybody. I want everybody to register. I want everybody to be ready to go vote on that day. But I want the candidates to work hard to get your vote, even at the 11th hour. People are telling me, Q, you should have talked about this 2 years ago. For what? You want to talk to people who can actually do it. You don't want to talk to people who might can get it done or gonna go talk to somebody to get it done. Right. You want people that can do it. Now we're dealing with people that can actually do it. It needs to be done. I think the whole country see that something needs to be done. Right. And it's more than just police reform. It's more than just justice reform. It's more than criminal reform. It's economic reform. Dollars got to hit our streets in these Black communities, not minority communities. They're already hitting the streets in minority communities, but only Black people only get 2% of when you hear the word minority. We usually only get 2% of that because there's a lot of minorities in this country. I mean, 70% of the country is minorities.
Right.
And then, so when you add them all together with everybody that gets included in that word. So we need Black specific things to hit our streets, you know what I mean? And to actually give jobs, to create businesses in them exact neighborhoods, because nothing else is gonna work for us. It hasn't been working, and I feel the same thing is coming if people don't, you don't have to adapt everything in the contract with Black America. Of course, you can't get that done 55 days, but you can get some things, you can agree to a lot of this, and I'm looking at it right here for everybody who say, why do you keep looking to the right? It's the contract is right here. So we can get a lot of this done. We can agree to a lot of this. Man, I mean, you read it. It's 4 pages. It's 22 pages. It's a 22-page long document. So it's not like it's gonna take forever to read. It's sensible. It's reasonable. And so
and the police reform one as well, bro. And I just think that we're, the world is watching. There's more eyes and ears open at this moment right now for this conversation, for these, for these wants, for these demands, whatever you may call them. Have you had a chance to speak to anyone either when we think about the presidential side, the Biden camp, the Trump camp? Have you had a chance to speak to anyone about when we speak on a contract with Black America?
Yeah, we talking to both sides. And you know,
Are they listening?
I believe they are. You know, it's a situation that's developing. We got to wait and really see what they say. We're gonna talk more with both sides, you know, within this next week or so, and try to get to some kind of agreement on what they can do out of this contract. Because, like I said, us getting out of the situation that we in is really a bipartisan issue. Both sides see that something needs to be done. Okay, so with that, we need both sides working together to do something. Now, politics has been polarizing, but both sides see that something needs to be done. So we're gonna need both. We don't need somebody to say we was gonna do it, but they don't want to do it, and we don't want to hear the other side say they didn't really bring it to us. So we need both sides to agree that these economic things, and we're just dealing right now with the economic situations in our community, so we can deal with other things, because somebody's going to get elected and somebody's going to have to go forward to push this stuff.
And you know, and the thing about this is, guys, when I first saw Ice Cube get mentioned in the same line as Donald Trump, I had the same first reaction a lot of people had. Not Cube, not fuck the police. The guy who literally wrote "fuck the police," the guy who literally sit there and says, you know, back to 2016, he'll never sit there and back a piece of shit like Trump, who sat there and said that Trump systematically is destroying our way of life. And then when I first said that, you know, Katrina Pearson, who again, that crazy person that was that 4 more years, the best is yet to come, that screaming lady, yeah, her, sat there and tweeted that, of course, Ice Cube is working with the Trump administration on the Platinum Plan, which, again, it sounds just horrendous when you read it. Very horrendous. But when that first came out and Cube said, yeah, we're talking to the Trump administration, a lot of people said, well, he's a sellout. It's like, well, you know, you're cooning, right? You're walking that fine line between cooning right now and, you know, saying that, you let us down and stuff like this. I admit I had those thoughts at first, until I decided I want to take a look. Especially I wanted to take a look at his contract with Black America, which you can see here at basically contract for blackамerica.us, in which he pretty much puts in there, it's a 13-point thing so far, which again he says about the bill to guarantee black opportunity representation, adopt a plan of neo-reconstruction to address past wrongs systematically imposed on Black Americans economically through the major race that results in the wealth gap. He talks about that. He also talks about additional black opportunity representation will include affirmative action, public schools, para and public and private, per student funding in states based on equal basis of paid by local property taxes and stuff like that. He talks about lending reform as well, where he says bank lending will be regulated to require banks to lend a percentage of all loan and credit categories on equal basis of the black population each bank serves. However, the minimum threshold must meet the yearly percentage equal to the national black population. Rates on black loans federally and from banks to be the same average as white people. He also talks about federal funding, where he passed a federal program providing every child with a government-funded trust account at birth, starting with a $1,000 contribution. The accounts to be managed by the Treasury, and only those born to lower wealth families will receive more contributions each year, up to $46,500 total. At age 18, the access will be allowed to use the funds allowed, but use restricted, enhanced actions such as buying homes, starting business, funding education. He talks about the Federal Reserve and government pensions, whereas a one-time interest-free loan for home ownership. He also talks about free to adopt modern monetary theory with the goal of full employment and avoidance of actual inflation. He talks about federal state pension funds, over $1 trillion, that must allocate 13% of their investments to the black-owned enterprises and businesses. Financial oversight, where he talks about a commission will set up to overlook a report on black and minority lending, housing and ownership mortgages, and enforcement of those items. Such authority will also be such as equal economic opportunity zones, and community investment acts to determine who is benefiting from the disbursement of those funds. Pretty much setting up a watchdog area to make sure the money is going to the right areas. He also goes into personal data and credit, where he talks about basically checking against things that about the data that's being shown out, such as the individual on rent, utility, and cell phones, or bill payments, and also that the right they must be able to dispute incorrect data. Because let's be honest, credit is a lot of things, especially with simple fact of the matter is that whether you're going for a job, a house, or a car, credit will be looked at, and unfortunately, credit is more enacted on black people than anything else. He talks about also prison reform, where he says private-run prisons will be abolished, prison labor will be disallowed without consent, and nonviolent offenders incarcerated for 10 years or longer will be freed if good behavior standards are met. Of course, he does also sit there and say that all prisoners for marijuana possession will be freed. First offense for legal use of drug possession require government payment for entry to an approved drug rehabilitation. Basically, I got really torn up in those words just now. Basically, they're going to be into a drug rehabilitation program by government payment, and voting rights are restored once they complete their sentence. He talks about judicial reform, where he talks about removing the 3-strike law and the mandatory minimums, and also reforming the stricter guidelines for the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, and DOJ can be sued for non-compliance. Lynching to become a federal hate crime, which it actually already has, and the Ku Klux Klan has been declared a terrorist organization, which is not. He also talks about the Police Reform Act, where he sat there and says, really a lot of stuff that's already been done. Really, it's already been talked about itself, but again, elimination of qualified immunity, requirement of mandatory malpractice insurance for police officers, talked about the use of dashboards and body cams, elimination of chokeholds and no-knock warrants, de-escalation training, and penalties for tampering or withholding evidence, and things of that nature, and also a database of officers who have been actually charged with these things. So they cannot be hired, they cannot be hired anywhere else once they've been fired. And again, he goes. They also have prosecutors solely prosecuting police instead of wrongdoing, accused of wrongdoing. He also talks about FCC licensing, where it asks to require more black produced content equal to 20% of total content on the networks, as measured by time. He talks about Confederate monuments institutions being removed. And to rename all streets, schools, and public structures named after Confederate soldiers. He talks about the AGB program, which is a private program that has access to job and education for people trained, willing to put in the work and commitment. And he also talks about black responsibility, where he actually talks about the mental health side of things, where he talks about that make sure that the black people have access to mental health therapy, things of that nature, to help with the frustration, hopelessness, depression, alcoholism, drug abuse, and violence and crime. So initially, the contract with Black America that Ice Cube has really put out there is, I give it to it. A lot of it I agree with. Some of it has already been done or implemented by others, but I do like the fact that he's putting that out there. I don't like the fact that he calls it a contract, because again, a contract with Black America makes it feel like we're up for grabs. And I understand a lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, I mean, what do you think you do with your vote? You're doing with your vote because you're believing the person that you're voting for has the same interests as you, I would hope. But calling it a contract just makes it feel like, it makes it feel like, to me, it's like, no, that means our vote can be bought and paid for. Because if that's the case, Trump can look at this and say, okay, I guarantee all of this on your contract we will do within 55 days if you can make sure that black people vote for me. That's what it sounds like, and that's the reason why I can't get behind it as far as the name goes. I like the fact that he's hitting different areas as far as financial, reserve, data and credit, phone reform, prison reform, judicial reform, police reform, FCC licensing. I get all that. I am for all that. But I wish that I could take his idea of what the things we want to put forward, take Diddy's idea of a political party and merge the two together, because it seems like that you would be, not called a contract, but this is what we want to put it. This is our bill of rights going forward that we want to push forward. That's what I wish he would do, along with Diddy, as far as pushing that party forward, because I think that would be a lot more impactful as far as me. Now, I understand a lot of people that say, I have no problem with this, things of that nature. So I admit, like I said before, going back to Ice Cube again, Ice Cube, I get where he's going from. Its intentional is great. But again, talking with Trump never gets anywhere. But don't believe me, I have several different examples to go by. So let's go through them one by one where Steve Harvey met with Donald Trump.
I want to say, don't worry about me. And I'm going to do the right thing, whatever it is. I may be right, and they may be right. But I said, be yourselves. What do you say, Steve? Let them do it. I could have said, do this, say that. I don't want that. I want them all to be themselves.
Okay, and on
everybody okay?
Yes, sir,
everybody
on
good?
repeal and replace.
Thank you. Thank you. Say hello to Harvey. Repeal and replace is going great.
Sir, Mr. Trump.
Well, that was Mr. Trump with Steve Harvey, the
And yeah, that was Steve Harvey. But let's not also forget, he met with the leaders of the HBCU.
Historically black colleges and universities. He announced Johnny Taylor Jr. is the new chairman of the President's Board of Advisors on HBCUs.
Johnny is the CEO of the Society for Human Resource Management, which serves to connect the students at these institutions with the jobs of tomorrow. I know he will advance the cause of HBCUs, a major priority of our administration.
This board has an incredible opportunity to highlight HBCUs as wellsprings of the diverse talent American employers want and need today.
The president says he has requested $500 million in the budget for HBCU-focused programs.
And let's not also forget, he also met with religious leaders.
I met some fantastic people, some of whom I've known. I thought it was an absolutely amazing, it lasted for 2.5 hours. We came up with lots of good ideas and lots of future ideas, but I thought it was an amazing meeting.
And how did you address some of the concerns that were raised?
Well, I think we'll be addressing them over the coming months and even over the coming years. I mean, these are deep-seated difficulties that certain communities have, and we're going to address them. And certainly if I'm put in a position where I can do something about them, which in this case happens to be president, we will be working very, very closely with everybody, and we're going to be solving a lot of problems. Right now you have black youth. If you look at African-American youth, where it's 51 and 55 and 57% unemployed. You have African-American people of different ages where it's double and triple other numbers. So we're looking at a lot of different things, but this meeting was amazing, amazing people. We must have had close to 100 people in the room. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank both of you. And in particular, I'll tell you what, there's a whole group of people standing behind me. You can't see them because we actually didn't think we were going to be having a press conference, but we all thought it was such a good meeting we would do that, and we have many, many endorsements that came out of the meeting.
Is Black Lives Matter a real movement? Is Black Lives Matter?
Well, I don't want to discuss that because, I felt it. Black lives are very important. White lives are very important, and to me, all lives are very important. Very, very important.
What is your reaction to some of the backlash that some of these religious leaders have gotten?
Well, I don't think we had backlash. I mean, I saw love in that room. I see love everywhere I go. I see tremendous amounts. Like right now, I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to Georgia. We're going to have a tremendous crowd in Georgia, just like we did in Sarasota. We had 12,000.
And just to make it interesting, the coup de grace.
Office today, unfiltered and unapologetic.
Trump is on his hero's journey right now, and he might not have expected to have a crazy like Kanye West.
For more than 10 minutes, the controversial rapper delivering a frenetic, at times jarring, monologue.
It was something about when I put this hat on, it made me feel like Superman.
West repeatedly slapping the historic Resolute desk.
Manufacturing.
Freestyling by our count on more than 40 topics.
What I think is we don't need sentences, we need pardons. It's a hydrogen-powered airplane, and this is what our president should be flying in. Look at this, Jared. If he don't look good, we don't look good. This is our president. So when I said I like Trump to like someone that's liberal, they'll say, oh, but he's racist. You think racism can control me? Oh, that don't stop me. That's an invisible wall. You are tasting a fine wine. It has multiple notes to it.
The provocative performance nearly leaving even the president speechless.
That was quite something. That was quite something.
It was from the soul.
West sharing that he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder before getting a second opinion.
He said that I actually wasn't bipolar. I had sleep deprivation, which could cause dementia.
a presidential invitation intended to focus on social issues with a superstar ambassador. The surreal scene, a mutual admiration society.
Let me give this guy a hug right here. I love this guy right here.
Peter Alexander, NBC News.
So again, 3 examples. The reason why you can't work with Trump is basically because nothing good can come from it. Steve Harvey has tried. The presidents of the HBCUs, which I am still annoyed that still actually went to this man to ask for funding. You saw black pastors, some of them Jonathan Gray from Relentless Church, or used to be Relentless Church, went up and actually spoke on his behalf. Darren Scott, the guy, the pastor up there that had the waves, we couldn't figure out which way he wanted to go with his hair. And also, just like I said, the coup de grace of it all, Kanye West. We can all remember Kanye West's infamous rant from the White House when he sat there and called Trump his dad, and said that he felt like Superman when he put on a red MAGA hat. Again, this is the point that I'm only saying all this because Ice Cube talking with Trump will literally get nowhere. And if the things he historically has shown us, because I've had people come back and sit there and say, well, he actually did sign the executive order to fund HBCUs for the next 10 years. Really? Has any HBCUs received any money? Because I'm just curious. I mean, yeah, you can sit there and say that you signed an executive order to ensure the HBCUs are funded. The last time I checked, TSU, Morehouse, and about a handful of others have yet to receive anything. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But again, I'm just saying the simple fact of the matter, guys, Trump doesn't get you anywhere. He likes the fact that he has these black photo ops. That's what I call them, black photo ops. And you should not be surprised about these black photo ops, just because the simple fact of the matter is he does not have a lot of black people around him. I mean, he barely has Ben Carson, and let's be honest, you have a person who used to be a surgeon, now the Department of Housing. Yeah. But with that being said, guys, like I said, that's going to do it for us as far as that. We're going to go into our feel-good segments. Like I said before, on How the Frack We Got Here, we do actually do cover a lot of stories that are a lot about doom and gloom and things of that nature. But hey, it's Saturday. Hopefully the sun is shining where you're at, or you have the day off and you want to end it out on a good note, have some positive vibes. So we're going to just, we have 4 stories left, and with these 4 stories, we're just going to go ahead and go through them. The first one I always find loving, because no matter your position, no matter where you are in life, if you have the ability to help, then you definitely should help. And this pizza shop actually does do that.
No money, no problem. Free slices if you need.
Every day we make slices.
Alyssa Nasser and her husband Tony own and run 3 pizza restaurants in Hudson, New Hampshire and Boston. The free slices started in the spring when New Hampshire schools closed and parents lost jobs.
But we figured, hey, let's offer them free slices. They can come in anytime, just mention the sign, and they get free slices. No questions asked.
And it hasn't stopped. People keep coming into the New Hampshire location every day.
I think we helped a lot of people in need. Some people come and they ask for drinks, desserts, anything. I give it away to them, for free.
The Nassers' 2 daughters work hard right alongside their parents. Anonymous donors have contributed to their free slice fund, and those who have benefited from a free meal have written to the family.
I received a letter, actually. I wish I had it still, from a lady. I don't remember her name, but she did send a letter a while back, like maybe back in April or May, saying thank you for what you're doing.
Business has actually increased in New Hampshire, while Boston's Crush location is off 80% due to fewer office workers in the city. But the Nassers believe in good karma.
If you can help somebody out, we do it.
God is watching over us, so yeah, even though we're only helping with a slice of pizza or whatever, but I think, it's going a long way.
The Nassers aren't quite sure how long the free slice policy will last, but they do say as long as there is demand, they will supply.
And I always thought that was cool. Like I said, whether you're a pizza shop or you can offer food or things of that nature, it is always cool to actually sit there and be able to help somebody if you can do it. And I've always said it best, if you have the ability to help somebody, do it. I mean, if you can help somebody out, you don't know that it's always going to be a positive impact if you can. Now, I'm not saying don't stretch yourself to the point to where you're going to be in dire need, but if you can help somebody, definitely do that. So the other story I have is about this guy, 12-year-old young man who will be studying aerospace engineering at Georgia Tech at 12 years old. I always love these stories about these kids because outside from the fact that these kids are geniuses, the fact of how young they are. Like, for example, this young man who comes from Georgia, sat there and said, mimicking his mother's speech when he was just 4 weeks old. By the age of 2, he could read the Constitution. I'm sorry, that was terrible. By the age of 2, he could read the Constitution. By the age of 3, he had gained acceptance to Mensa, which is very, very, very difficult to get into unless you're very intelligent. And he also is fluent in Spanish, French, and Mandarin. But I love the fact he goes, I'm not really smart. I just grasp information quickly. It's interesting, like I said before, he was hoping to gain an internship with Elon Musk of Tesla. I understand that. But eventually, by completing high school by the age of 11, like I said before, getting an acceptance to Georgia Tech to study aerospace engineering, I just gotta congratulate that young man because that is amazing. At the same time, like I said, I hope he gets to follow his dreams. But I always love to see young black kids, especially kids who are gifted and talented, be able to go to college and be able to follow their dreams. That's just my big thing. But moving right along, guys, like I said before, the digital divide is definitely happening, and with this case, there are some people trying to do some things about it.
1 in 5 people lack high-speed internet, which includes an alarming 15 is in one community that's trying to make it easier for them. Good morning again, Will.
Hey there, good morning. I am in South Bend, Indiana at Riley High School, where the principal here is going the extra mile to keep his students connected.
It's an early school day in South Bend, Indiana. These buses outfitted with Wi-Fi are en route to over 50 locations across the city.
I wake up and get the bus together so the kids can have Wi-Fi to do their schoolwork.
Providing connectivity for remote learning to over 16,000 students.
My Wi-Fi at home isn't very good in general. It makes it a lot easier for me to get my stuff done.
What started as a project before the pandemic of Superintendent Todd Cummings is now a lifeline.
Nearly 30% of our students did not have access to Wi-Fi. And so what we thought we were doing was providing internet access to extend the day. Little did we know that with COVID, we would be providing internet access to our students and their families at home.
So those buses are narrowing the gap of that digital divide.
For Sean Henderson, it's personal. The proud Riley High School 1998 graduate is now in his 4th year as principal there.
My desire to be principal has always been just to serve the students in our community. One student without internet in our district is too many.
I have a younger brother. My dad and mom both on the computer, so it's sometimes rough with 4 of us on a computer.
It is 8 o'clock. We're getting ready for e-learning.
This mom of 2 spends her days in the car outside the Wi-Fi buses so her daughters can access e-learning.
I don't have much room in my vehicle so they can get as comfortable as they can.
But with inclement weather and winter approaching, it's only a temporary solution.
This is a Band-Aid. My dream and the district's dream is that every student in the district that needs internet will have access. We believe it's a basic human right.
This is for the students that we serve, the students that we love, and the students that we want to provide an opportunity of success.
I'm here with Sean Henderson, the principal of Riley High School. Thank you so much for welcoming us here in your community at your school. So commendable what you're doing with the school buses. We have a little gift for you. I'm going to ask you to go in there and grab that gift bag. Please go right ahead. All right. And I'm going to need you to root around and find what's in there. T-Mobile's got this thing called Project 10 Million. They're aiming to get students connected to the internet, over 10 million households for free. That right there is a T-Mobile Wi-Fi hotspot that they are so generously giving 1,400 of those to this school district here for 5 years for free. How does that sound? Not bad, right?
That's awesome.
So while the school bus thing is amazing, we thought we might help go the extra mile, help T-Mobile. T-Mobile would help us do this for you. How are you feeling? What's that going to mean for this community?
It means a lot for the community. To narrow the gap for students to be able to just have the opportunity to have access, internet access at home, it's amazing. So we're blessed. Thank you.
Well, we're so happy to be a part of this. And now for the best phrase in the subgenre of surprise morning television. But wait, there's more. We're going to bring in the superintendent, Superintendent Cummings. X marks the spot for you right there. We and our friends at Donors Choose have a little gift for you. We'll get you a real one of these, but $20,000 for the school district, for the South Bend Community School District, to fund teacher projects. Everyone clearly very excited. But for you folks at home, if you are able to get involved, what you can do is go online, go to Donors Choose. For today only, Donors Choose is matching 50.
Celebrate an amazing woman who's giving back to her community right there in New York.
Amazing indeed, Robin. And check it out. She's been right across the street on the Hard Rock Cafe marquee all morning long. She thinks she's here for a cooking demonstration, but our TJ Holmes actually has a major surprise for her. So, George, let's bring in Millie.
Good morning, Millie. How are you this morning?
Hey, good morning.
This is George right here. I'm here with Robin, Michael, and Amy, the whole GMA gang. And I know you think...
Hey, good morning. Hey, Miss Robin. Hey, George Steph. What's up, y'all?
Good morning.
Now, I know you've got a great recipe ready to show us this morning, but, you know, that's not all we're here to do today. We got a lot more in store for you. So we want you to turn around right now. Look down.
Oh, hey, friends.
You see TJ down there?
All right.
TJ.
I did see him at some point. Where is he?
She's got to look
TJ,
up.
give me a wave.
No. He gave you the wrong directions, Millie.
Oh, you're up.
What's up, TJ?
And see, TJ, I made my way up. George.
TJ came to sneak up on me. What's up, brother? How you feeling? Bop.
Good to meet
What's up?
you. And I have to start off our segment. This is one of our Tell TJ segments.
Okay.
And I have to start like I often do by saying, I'm sorry.
What you got to tell me, though?
I'm sorry because we've been lying to you for weeks.
Why?
Because we are not interested this morning in you cooking for us. We are actually interested in honoring you. So many people have been telling me about you that we now want to tell the whole country what you have actually been doing. So I need you to turn around again and look at that monitor.
Okay.
And everybody take a look.
Okay.
Chef Millie has the biggest heart I've ever met from a person. She's caring, she's compassionate, she wants to help people, and she's fulfilled by helping other people.
Meet Chef Millie Peartree, a bright light to her hometown Bronx.
What kind of person is Millie? Millie is the type of person to make you feel good about yourself. She can do it without words. I think that's the rarest quality in the world.
She's gained a bit of a reputation for putting community first.
She has this saying, she says, I may not have the most, but I definitely don't have the least.
And Chef Millie has been a blessing to my community, feeding these children, having their bellies full.
When the pandemic hit, so many families were left without the resources for even the most basic needs, including food. So Chef got to work.
She was looking to provide food to children in the Bronx, and she wanted to make sure that the food goes to the most vulnerable communities.
Her program, Full Heart, Full Bellies, serves over 14,000 in the Bronx community where 31% of children live in homes considered food insecure.
As
a grandmother. If Chef Millie's food wasn't here today, I can say that there will be many families that will be lacking a nutritious meal. What Chef Millie has done for us, I know my children and I are grateful for her.
Her compassion spreads to the volunteers who distribute Millie's meals.
You know that, Mark? Let's go. I love to see everybody come out to get something to eat. We enjoy seeing y'all. There we go, baby. Have a good day.
Now with the future of in-person school uncertain, many kids could miss out on those daily meals. Chef Millie's work is even more crucial.
So what's going to happen to those kids? They're going to be able to eat breakfast. Are they going to be able to eat lunch or what?
And because of Chef Millie, they're able to keep the program running through the end of 2020, feeding potentially 15,000 more.
What does the food mean to me? Hey, it means everything.
When you see these children's faces and the families who she's providing for, it brings tears to my eyes and joy to my heart.
Well, Millie have changed my life.
Every time I eat it, I go to heaven. It's just so good. I can't take it.
And now it's time to say thank you for the love, for the food, for the smiles.
Thank you, Chef Millie. Thank you, Chef Millie. Thank you, Chef Millie. Thank you, Chef Millie.
Thank God for Chef Millie.
Guess what, Chef Millie? We got you.
Okay, Chef Millie, I need you to turn back around here with me. Okay, so we're sorry. We're sure your food is delicious, but this morning we brought you here because we wanted you to see that, and we wanted to honor you.
We can't
what do
cry
you
together,
think?
TJ.
It's okay. What do you think now? Seeing those folks talk about you the way they are. You're okay.
Well, first of all, I'm not supposed to touch my face with the coronavirus. I go to the Bronx, and is that George? Stop laughing in my ear.
That was an admiring laugh right there. You tell TJ
always
how to handle
playing. Come on,
himself.
we're going to talk
that.
offline, but let me talk to TJ real quick. You know, it's one thing when, you hear the stories of people that need it. And a lot of people I know, they proceed on the side of, they're prideful. Yeah. And for you to be able to stand online to get a meal, and even during COVID, after I recovered from it, and when I started to drive around to feed, essential workers and people combating COVID on the front line, and to see people online for pantry, it touches your heart. Like, we live in a country that is the richest country in the world. Why do we have people out here starving? You understand what I'm trying to say?
But we also have people out here like you who are helping fill that need. And you've been up here in Times Square, I know, with some producers, a photographer, freezing, but you think you're by yourself. You're not actually. Look over there, and I think you recognize all those friends and family who have been here, who have been watching.
Oh, look at Jay and Chef Frank and Matt and Chef Kareem and Shauna.
To honor you
Mark
as well.
That's my mentor. Y'all got Mark on here?
We got everybody
we
can get on the screen. Now, Chef Millie, are you going to be able to continue your work, you think? Now, the need might be there for a while longer.
Absolutely. I never say never, but as the way it is now, I don't plan on opening a restaurant, but this is my passion, and I believe there's a blessing and a lesson in everything. And this is my project moving forward, indefinitely, whatever it is, I'm putting it out there. I'm going to speak it into existence. So I already spoke to Martha Stewart. I'm going to be the Black Martha Stewart. Okay. We're going to have a building. We're going to feed children indefinitely. We're going to have a temperature control room so that guy, Mark Shire, right there, doesn't have to sit in a seafood facility to pack boxes.
Okay, it sounds like you have to, we'll find a way to pay for all this. We'll find a way to pay for all this.
Okay,
right,
I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay, all right. Well, hold it to me because I'm a man of my word.
Okay.
Because we know people, including America's egg farmers, who we told your story to. Again, people tell me about you, and then I tell them about you as well.
That's what I'm supposed to do. That's right.
But the American egg farmers and the folks at the Incredible Egg, if you can turn around here and look at that screen one last time, we have something else for you. And they wanted to make sure that you were going to be able to be honored and continue your work, and they are donating $15,000 to you to be able to continue your work.
That's amazing.
This morning, Millie. What will you be able to do with that, Chef?
$15,000, we'll be able to feed some more children. You know what I mean? That's the plan. We're going to keep this going. I tell people all the time, I don't make a dime or a dollar from this. You know what I mean? So whatever I got to do and use my talent to help someone else, I'm all for it.
Oh, all right. Well, Chef Millie, yes, I wish we could hug it out, and we got supposed to keep
on.
up.
We will at some point in the future.
At some point we will, but we wanted to honor you. Thank you for what you've been doing. Everybody is impressed by your story. And George, stay out of my guest's ear when they have tears coming down their eyes, please.
Like I said, that's all we're going to do. We're going to feed the kids. We're going to vote. Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor.
Still,
that's right.
And a message. She has a meal, a message, and some money.
That's right.
Even this morning, guys. So
thank you, GMA, for incredible Ed, for being such a blessing. We appreciate you, Bronx, all day.
All right. All right. I'll toss back to Robin, Amy, and Michael.
Bronx all day. I like that story. That's what I say about whole people. You know, when you're doing well and you help out people to that extent, then I can't be mad at you. All I can do is congratulate you. And like I said, you probably had some tissue moments. I'm not gonna lie. That was a tearjerker. That did not sound right when that came out of my head. But that being said, guys, that's really all that I have for you. Like I said, thank you all for watching and things of that nature. Now, before I do get out of here, I do have some shameless plugging like I usually do, which I hope until the pages come up, because, you know, Facebook is kind of being a butt lately, so I kind of have to be careful. I had to be careful sometimes. Like I said, Facebook is being a butt, so I have to be nice. But hey, they actually came up. I actually gave it credit for it. So like I said, I do have some shameless plugs I need to do before I get out of here. I'll start with the first one. My buddy Vaughn, Big BZA Dot on Facebook, Big BZA Dot on social medias, has a few shows of his own. The first one is called the VSTs, the Intercast, as he loves to show. The VST is pretty much a news podcast. That news could be anything from video games to music to trailers, because he does love to show trailers. I call him the king of weird trailers, just because he finds the most weirdest ones to watch. And again, it just sticks with you. That's the best way I can put that. It just sticks with you. But again, interactive show just like mine. He also has Rhythm This Week, reminisce over the rhythm in which he goes over albums of the past and present, grades to a 4-tier rating system. It's kind of sporadic right now about Rhythm This until we all get our schedule straight as far as getting things in life and things of that nature. But whenever we do get together, it's really just a bunch of guys, Vaughn, myself, and others, in which we basically just go over new music, as you heard me and Vaughn do about 2 Sundays ago. We'll actually go over new music and just grade to a 4-tier rating system. And, you know, like I said, we and him have differences on the musical spectrum, but there are some things that we do like, and hey, differences in music do lead to great conversation. And also, he has Random as Fuck with Uncle VZ. Random as Fuck is the pool of practice we sometimes have our toes into to take a break from life and have a chuckle. Some bills make you think, some bills make you cry, but they're always to a theme, and trust me, the theme is always crazy, but he always does that every Tuesday just to reset your week. And he also has his Funkin' Around, I like to call it his creation process video. If you don't know Vaughn, he is a guy that likes to make beats. At the same time, he also likes to show the creative process behind it, and I always love seeing geniuses at work, and trust me, he is one of those. But you can definitely check out all his shows on his Facebook page at Big VZA Dot or Big VZA Dot on all social medias. My other brother, another brother who will remember next week to actually do his podcast, Thomas Reed, aka the Mountain Puncher, as he's been called, has a show called To Be Determined. Now, what is To Be Determined? To Be Determined is a fitness podcast. Now, if you've ever seen Thomas work out, like right here, he is a guy that likes to work out 7 days a week. Even more so, I'm pretty sure he's working out somewhere right now. But he is a guy that loves fitness. Let's talk about everything fitness, and it also wants to help you reach your best, both mentally and physically. And like I said, he does crazy shit. Like literally go on a short bench trying to get more core activation just because he believes in difficulty. But hey, you know, it works for him because, as you can see, that tank top is real loose. So, and plus it's coming from a guy who used to be over 400 pounds. Trust me, I remember Thomas when he was over 400 pounds. I'm pretty sure he's somewhere between 180 and 190 right now. But again, to be determined every Thursday, which he usually does a Q&A from the gym. I don't think he did one this week, but I guess I'll take it upon myself to remind him to do one this week. Because like I said, he has a lot of knowledge I believe that he can share out there. And like I said, if you want to do stuff like this, because look, okay, first and foremost, I need y'all to know something about this. The guy's back and everything. You can see the delts. You can see the rears. You can see the shoulder blades. You can see the neck muscles. I know he needs a haircut, but you know he's trying. But at the same time, that's what he's doing, and I'm almost certain that stick is right about the 160, 180 range, if I had to think about it. Not sure what this guy's really doing on this side, but hey, whatever gets you in, Doc. And of course, he has some shameless promotions in his own videos. But he actually does his show every Thursday. Like I said, Q&A from the gym once he finishes. But definitely go on to his Facebook page, Thomas Reed, or his YouTube page, number 2, letter T, letter B, letter D, to see all his previous podcasts from there. Now, as for yours truly, I do have a few podcasts of my own. Every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. is the Burned Out Podcast. That is my IT storytelling podcast in which I go over everything funny and interesting from my experiences of IT. And like I said, stories about my experience. So if you find them funny, that's great. And if not, then I'm probably talking about you. You need to lighten up anyway. But it's always for having fun. And like for me, it's a lot less cheaper than therapy. Of course, every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon is my How the Frack We Got Here podcast, which you're currently watching now. Now, I usually say a little bit later on Saturday between 8 and 10 p.m. is the Off Limits podcast, in which there is nothing off limits, as we talked about black people and voting and why you should vote. As we talked about last week, unfortunately, there will not be one today. We will actually take a break from that today, and we'll come back next Saturday night between 8 and 10 p.m. with a brand new topic from then. Of course, on Sunday between 7 and 9 p.m. is the Get Bit podcast. That is my Blurred podcast, in which we cover video games, we cover sci-fi, television, movies, Marvel, DC, comics, cosplay, even try to cover sports sometimes, because even sports including professional wrestling, because for some of us who still watch professional wrestling, it's still real to some of us. Damn it. But all of my shows can be found on my Facebook page at William Buchanan, or under their own Facebook and YouTube pages. So if you do look up on Facebook or YouTube, you can look up The Burned Out Podcast, How the Frack We Got Here, the Off Limits Podcast, and Get Bit, that is GITBIT. You'll be able to see every podcast I've done thus far. That being said, guys, if you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. I'm open to criticism either way. I try to make this platform better and more enjoyable, and also more informative to everybody who watches, because that is the whole entire point about this show, is trying to inform, not to change opinions, not to persuade you, to simply give you all the facts and allow you to make up your mind for yourself. Aside from that, guys, like I said, COVID-19 is still out there. Please wear a mask if need be. Please, if you're out and about, I should say, please wear a mask. Try to avoid, going out to large crowds if need be. I know Nashville, Tennessee, like my home state is open for business. I really wish it wasn't, but again, be safe, be courageable, avoid large crowds. If you're sick, please stay home. If you're feeling worse, please take yourself to an ER and get looked at, or go to a hospital and please get looked at. And also at the same time, be mindful of children and elder adults, because they are basically more targeted, and they actually have been the more accountable deaths that have happened with COVID-19. And again, like I said, be safe and think of others. That's what we need to start doing right now. Aside from that, guys, like I said, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Please think, if you see a nurse, a doctor, nurse's aide, doctor's aide, environmental people that work in the hospitals, or people that work in hospitals, period, please just say thank you. The reason why I say that is because they're not getting a lot of praise for them putting their lives on the line for dealing with COVID-19 patients, as well as trying to avoid having COVID-19 themselves and take it back to their families. So again, just be, it doesn't, I mean, they really need a lot more done for them, but for the majority of the public, we can at least say thank you, let them know and acknowledge them for their services. Now, also, guys, I hate to keep saying this, because again, I know that there are a lot of curvy women out there. There are a lot of women who are very attractive in nurses' scrubs. And I can't believe I have to say this. Stop. Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. Don't be creepy. Just simply say that you're a nurse. Oh, well, thank you for what you're doing right now. Oh, you're a doctor. Okay, well, thank you for what you're doing right now, because you guys are not getting enough credit for literally the shitstorm that you guys handle. Simple as that, guys. Either way, don't be creepy. Aside from that, also thank essential workers. I'm talking about those that work in gas stations, grocery stores, truck drivers, those that work in factories and warehouses, like Amazon or DHL, also logistics as well, like DHL, UPS, FedEx, United States Postal Service, and all those other areas. Because like I said, those are areas that people are they're taking great painstaking to be safe, but they're also working to keep the rest of us and to keep the lights on for all of us. So also thank you to those guys as well. So like I said, this whole show is about informing. Like I said, the whole point of this podcast is about informing others, because simply put, a community, a world, a society does better when we're informed. An uninformed community got us Trump, and that's how the frack we got here. But an informed community can vote Trump out, and we can hopefully be on the path to being better. So, with that being said, guys, I do thank you all for watching. If you're watching this live, leave a comment. I thank you for that. If you're watching some of the playback, feel free to comment if it's live, because I still want to be able to see your opinions, things of that nature. And if there's stories or anything that I missed that you want me to look into or cover, just please let me know, either by comment-wise or posting on Facebook on my page, and I'll be more than happy to look into it. Aside from that, guys, like I said, if there's early voting that's happening in your state, definitely use Google to find out. I know for Tennessee, like I said, early voting started October 14th. It will remain there until October 29th because elections will happen in November. So if you have the ability to vote, please go ahead and do so early, because you definitely don't want to be on the sidelines for this one. This vote, much like any others, is just too important to miss. So with that being said, guys, hope you guys have a happy Saturday. Again, thank you all for watching. I'm out.